Welcome to the Idaho Real Estate Investor Show, where we bring strategies and knowledge that will help you succeed in Idaho's ever-changing real estate market. I'm Jonna Weber. I'm an Idaho investor, realtor, and entrepreneur. I've been successfully investing for over 2 decades and helping countless others do the same. We'll bring you real stories from successful investors, expert advice, and insights to help you build generational wealth through the power of real estate. Whether you're just getting started or well on your way, let's jump in. Hey, welcome back to the Idaho Real Estate Investors Show. I'm Jonna Weber, and I am here with my very special guest today, Mike Turner. And Mike is a local investor with an investment company, 208 Invest and 208 Renovate. He has been investing and a broker in the Treasure Valley since 2005. He leads an incredible nonprofit charity called Impact Club you'll hear more about, and we're going to get started. I am someone who has been watching Mike for a number of years here in our community as a leader, really, in the real estate world, as I've come up through the ranks as an agent myself and, of course, as a fellow investor, and just really getting to know each other this year, and it is so fun. I'll tell a little backstory about that, but first of all, welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So glad that you're here. And the backstory, I'm just going to share before I forget to say it, but I actually went to college with Mike's sister, and we were in the same sorority. And so Mike doesn't know it, but he and I go way, way back. I heard all the stories in college about Mike. Just kidding. just kidding. I don't even know if I knew Sandy had a brother.
Yeah.
And that part of that was you were living far, far away, right?
In Alaska,
so
yes.
yeah, tell us about that. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up on an island in Alaska, a town called Sitka. That's where my parents moved up there in the 60s, and I was there till I was 18.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of a different way to grow up.
And how did that road lead you down to Idaho?
Wow. I really wanted to get off the rock, so to speak. And so when I became 18, I left, and I actually did a year in University of Montana for a year, which was fun, in Missoula. But then I realized I didn't really have any direction. And when I was up in Alaska, I ended up working for a lot of the cruise lines that came into town. So I had the company boat, and I'd drive up alongside of it and go up and all these cruise ships and talk to the captains in the purser's office. Anyway, I ended up meeting these people called pilots who drove these cruise ships in U.S. waters. And I was like, how'd you get this job? And long story short, most of them went to a maritime academy. I went to a maritime academy in California, got a captain's license and a business degree there. And that kind of started me in this path of, one, in the business side of things, but it got me kind of, I love the idea of adventuring and seeing the world, maybe because I grew up on an island. But my parents did take us on some trips, so they planted the seed for sure. But I just wanted to adventure and see the world, and so I started making decisions around that. And it's a bit of a longer story how I came back to Idaho.
Okay.
But eventually I did, and ever since then I've been full-time in real estate here in Idaho.
Wow.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so 2000, you said ever since then, I know you said 2005 you got your license, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that was right when we were heating up for the first go around of Heat Up in Boise.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, I got into real estate in part because I was working overseas for a couple of years, working on TV shows and movies, and as a Marine
as you
Corps
can
day.
tell,
I know.
we can go down a lot of different roads
paths. I got to
here.
be
There's
careful.
been the many lives of Mike Turner.
Yeah, right. So, but I'd come back, and my house that I had in California that I had purchased, it like doubled in value, almost tripled. And I was like, whoa, well, this is awesome. And that kind of led me to reading books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad and trying to understand more about real estate because I was making more money with my house than I was with the jobs I was doing. And so I started looking around, and I started researching good markets. I found Boise, heard good things about Boise from my sister, and came up here, checked it out, and I've been here ever since. I made a couple offers on some investment properties and decided to move into one, and that launched me here in Boise.
Okay.
That was in 2004.
2004.
Mm-hmm.
So did you start investing before you actually got your license?
Yeah, well, I did because I bought a rental property and a total uh, fixer, like the worst kind of fixer you can think of. I bought one of those. My wife and I did, and we made the poor decision of moving into it. And then
Live and flip.
yeah, and then managed to stay together even though it was a very stressful time. But in that process, I was getting ready to sell it. I was like, well, it'd be helpful if I had my real estate license, and then that would help me find the next deal potentially. So I wanted to be able to research, and so I went to real estate school and got licensed in 2005. In school, I was like, market was red hot, and I was seeing, stories from the instructors about all the things you could do in real estate. I was like, oh, well, maybe I should make a go at that. I feel like I could do well in this space. And so that kind of got me thinking more like a realtor and less like an investor for a while, even though I started as an investor. And next, I'm at like a Remax office, and I'm off trying to make that work. And that Remax office closed 2 years later because the owner
market
went
crashed.
well,
or-
and the owner
Good.
first went bankrupt. All the and like literally they locked the doors of the office to where this is before we had smartphones too. Like our entire business was locked up in a real estate office.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, well, they've been shut down. It was commingling funds, and it was a messy situation. And that's when I realized, oh, I thought I was in the business for myself, but really I'm not. I'm kind of tied to this broker, and his poor decisions has kind of put me out of business, at least temporarily. And so that's when I decided I'm going to go ahead and be my own broker. So, I
It's a
went,
huge step.
yeah, and I hadn't even been in Idaho 2 years, and normally you need 2 years of a real estate license to get it. But I learned that you can game the system by some states don't require that. You can go directly to a broker's license. You just have to take all the classes, like California. So I took all the classes out of California, flew down, got my license there, flew back and say, hey, I got my broker's license in California. I got my Idaho's license, opened up my first office on Fairview Avenue. It's called Turner Real Estate Group.
Oh, I didn't realize that was the first name.
Yeah, it's 2007 was Turner Real Estate Group. Yeah, I did that for 3 or 4 years. There's just two. I took one other agent, Jared Cosby from the Remax office, and he and I started that brokerage, and then eventually that became Front Street Brokers when I moved downtown.
That's what I remember. We
Yeah.
had snazzy offices
Snazzy office,
downtown.
like, yeah.
Beautiful. You were the place to go before the realtor galas.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, it was fun. It was really fun to have a spot downtown, right in the center of Boise. Very boutique because we were very small.
Being a broker, it's all glamour, right?
Yeah, right.
No stress at all.
Yeah, it's been interesting, and when I got into real estate, I mostly worked with real estate investors because
did,
that
too.
was my
Okay.
mindset.
That's how I got started
Yeah,
too.
because that was my mindset, and they were so relieved that they're like, oh, okay, you understand what I'm trying to do. I'm like, yeah, I do. So that was most of my direction of working with investors. I did, of course, other types of real estate sales, but that was a lot of my focus for most of my
Nice.
career. And
And that you no longer have the brokerage,
no,
correct?
yeah, right. Definitely merged that in 2019. And it was something that it was really tough to do. You can get into a business or investment idea and you put your heart and soul into it.
Right.
And sometimes it doesn't work well. Like you can sometimes find out after you're kind of all in that this is maybe like a level 2 business idea instead of a level 8 or 10. And so you then faced with, all right, I got to shift or pivot the business or do something else. And that was kind of what I was faced with, is like, okay, the way the market's turned, the way that broker splits are now, I either have to get a lot bigger or even smaller. And I didn't really love both those decisions. And then I had another broker Brokerage, offered me like a merger situation, and I took that. And ever since then, I went full time back into real estate investing,
Okay,
which is what was my
let's.
passion was from the beginning, and I kind of missed it. And I had to keep my brokerage open. I had sold all my real estate investments when the market tanked because I opened my brokerage in 2007, right before the market just
Yeah, and if someone's
imploded.
listening here that
Yeah,
maybe is 20 years old now, they
yeah.
don't really
They don't
realize
understand. Like I
the impact
didn't
of that.
I couldn't fathom. I watched the market pretty close. I could not fathom that it could lose half its value and that like
Yeah,
half the people would walk away from their homes.
yeah,
Like it wasn't in the realm of possibility, but it happened in the
yeah.
Boise area.
Well,
It was
oh my
astonishing.
gosh, it
Yeah.
was. And real
Yeah.
estate, I was just going to lead on that when you said that you got away from the investing while you had the brokerage. I did similar. I was
Mm.
investing in rental properties and I was encouraged to get my license, which I did, and I thought I was just going to use it for one or two transactions a year for me.
Yeah.
But I caught the bug and I got all consumed and I
Exactly.
built a team and all of a sudden I was working 60 hours a week serving traditional buyers and sellers. And I
Yeah.
didn't invest during those times
Yeah.
because I was so busy with the other.
It
So it's
it
a balancing act when you
It's
try and do
I
both.
honestly I feel, and if for any real estate agent who's listening to this, is that you're so well equipped to
Oh
be
my
an
gosh.
investor that if you're not actively seeking that out and working at partnering with other your clients and doing stuff like that, you're making a massive mistake. And mostly because the investments, what you're building with that is those assets that hopefully will pay you for decades. And otherwise, you're just relying on your next commission, your next
Mhm.
sell, your next thing, and you're always hunting for the next thing. And uh, and so if you're not using that knowledge to create assets along the way, it's a big mistake. And I made that mistake because I had them, and then I was like, oh, I need to sell these so I can make this other business idea work. And looking back, that was not the wise decision.
Oh,
Yeah.
we have
Hmm.
all learned, but think how wise we're sitting here now. Don't you feel wise through all the
Oh, I know, right? Because you can make
so
so many mistakes. See, like if like mistake Olympics is, I
I
feel like I went through the last 20 years of within real
I
estate,
know.
and so I'm really knowledgeable now.
Yeah.
But it took a while to get
It's
there.
true. I
Mm.
remember like 20 years ago reading when John Maxwell's book came out, Failing Forward. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you've read that book,
Mm-hmm.
but I remember like being cocky and, young adult going, oh, yeah, failing. That's nice. Sure. Right. You have
Mm-hmm.
to fail. I'm not going to fail.
I know.
But now there are a lot of blessings and the different things that have twisted in our lives that didn't come out the way we thought they would. But let's get back to the investing.
Yeah.
You got serious about investing again.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what that looked like
Mm-hmm.
just a few years ago when you jumped out of the brokerage
Yeah.
and then I want to segue into what you're doing today.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I had some friends who were across the country who were home flippers, and they are encouraging me, because that they were having a lot of success. A lot of them had been real estate agents and then shifted into the investing side of things, and I was dragging my feet for a lot of different reasons. It's kind of odd to go to a position of where you're always trying to help the seller get the most money for the house to trying to get the best deal.
Mhm.
It's a pivot of situations, and I really struggled with that initially. Um, and but I found a way that felt good for me to operate, and I was able to then use my marketing and business background to uh, go out and find opportunities where people needed to sell right away and quickly. And as long as you were there with the money first, you got the deal basically. And then I started flipping houses, and that worked great. I mean, because COVID times, the real estate market went so red hot that you could make every mistake. And in fact, if you were making mistakes, it was better because it meant your flip took longer and therefore your house was worth more. It was nuts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah. And so that happened to me. And so I was like, oh, okay. I thought this was going poorly, but we had a really good exit. And so I did that, 25 times or so. I had my best year in real estate ever in 2021, not as a real estate agent, but purely as an investor. And it was awesome. And I thought, okay, I finally got things figured out. And um, as the market started to cool off with interest rates coming in 2022,
Mm-hmm.
January, they're at 3 point something percent. And then next, by May, they're at fives. And by June, July, they're, six, sevens. And it was such a quick change in the market. And I had purchased, I don't know, half a dozen properties in that spring. And I was like, oh my gosh, I overpaid these because I know I'm not going to be able to sell them.
Mm.
So that year was terrible for me because I was trying to then get out of them and show them I could work. And, it was really tough. And that's when I realized I'm still playing the same game I was playing as a realtor. I'm always hunting for the next deal.
Just that
Yeah,
active income versus
yeah, right.
passive,
I mean,
right?
I'm making these big checks occasionally, and that's exciting. But it's not. I'm always good as my last deal, and I don't. You don't always control when the next deal is gonna close.
Right.
And so if you have a family, like I've been since 2004, I've basically been 100%. My entire household has been no salaries, right? So
I was thinking about that. That's
yeah.
amazing.
So that means, and like 98% of all of our income has come from real estate, which means that's put me in a situation where I have to do something. And it's been good in the sense like I don't allow myself to fail. I'll work hard. I'll figure it out. But it's a terrible feeling to be under that much financial stress a lot. You can get up, but then you can quickly be down because what you thought was going to close next month or next 2 months doesn't happen. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And real estate has a slow sales cycle anyway. So it's nothing quick about it in many cases. So I realized, okay, I'm playing the wrong game. And that's when I shifted my mindset completely to moving away from big ticket, sales and closings or commissions and going all in on cash flow. And I started that way when I was early on. I was like trying to build up cash flow. I read the books. That was the advice, and I moved away from it. And but it's been really hard throughout my 20 years in Boise. Cash flow in Idaho, getting a decent return on cash flow in Idaho has been super tough.
Right.
Rents are kind of mediocre for this area, and sell prices are high, right? So, and that's shifted over the years, but it's always been a tough math in Idaho compared to like the Midwest,
Right.
for example. And so when I would help people, and as you did, like investors,
Mm-hmm.
like, they want cash flow. I'm like, okay, well, here's what it looks like here.
Right.
You're hopefully you're gonna get some good appreciation here
Yeah.
because the cash flow's tight. And so I knew all this. So I was looking for other strategies, and I had tested a lot of strategies over the last 20 years, from doing things like the creative financing side of things and all kinds of things, and had a lot of PTSD from that because I had a lot of those types of investments going when the market crashed, in 2008 through 2012. It was just a really tough time because, tenants and people and borrowers were walking away from their assets
Mm-hmm.
frequently. So I wasn't really in a hurry to go back in those situations, but I found an idea because I was involved in a lot of public-private meetings and initiatives for affordable housing. I've been doing a lot of stuff in radio and a lot of stuff in the real estate industry for a long time. And so I sometimes get consulted and brought in on different things. And I'd be in these meetings and I see what they're trying to do, but it's so hard to get these affordable housing projects done. It's really tough.
Right.
And I get frustrated with that because I want to move faster. I get frustrated with bureaucracy, and so I found a space in a way where if you can find affordable housing that's in rough shape and then make it nicer, like a way I was doing with my fix and flip business. And then what I do in the back end is I provide the lending on that. So I provide like owner financing on those affordable homes that I find. And what I found with that, because as an investor, I'm coming in at a really good price potentially because it needs everything.
Mm-hmm.
But because I'm experienced in doing a value add to the property, it doesn't cost me as much as most people would pay have to pay to have a home. I'm not paying retail. I'm a contractor. Okay. I'm a general contractor. And so I can get things done uh, relatively, inexpensively compared to what a lot of people have to pay. That gives me an opportunity then to raise the value of the property significantly. So even though I then sell it for financing at a much higher price point, I'm only in it for maybe a far less amount. So I'm not taking as big a risk as a bank would. You go to a bank and they say, okay, put 5% down or 3% down or whatever amount is.
Yeah.
They're then risking that entire amount, of money, and they're in a kind of a more dangerous situation in case the market dips, right?
Right.
And so I'm in a situation where I'm in way better equity position to begin with. Therefore, whatever interest rate I'm charging, I'm actually getting actual better rate and return on that because I don't have to invest in full amount in order to lend on that. I already own the asset.
Mm-hmm.
So if I own an asset for 100,000, that's all in, but I'm selling it for 200,000. Well, okay, I'm giving you a loan for 200,000, since I only have 100 into it, I'm basically doubling whatever interest rate I'm charging based on my rate of return on my money.
Right.
Okay, so my effective return is much higher. So I've been able to do this in a way where I can get great double-digit returns on all the things that I'm doing, and then also provide a great affordable housing option at the same time.
Eh,
And so it's been a great, cool little mix of things I've been doing in that space.
This is so cool. I love it. And that's the affordable housing here in the Treasure Valley and really throughout Idaho
Hmm.
is totally an interest and a passion of mine and something that I believe firmly that the Boise Real Estate Investor Network should get more involved in. So I just love what you're doing. Are you a busy person ready to dive into real estate investing but not quite sure where to start? I've got you covered. I've put together a free guide with 6 practical tips to kickstart your real estate journey. These tips are designed to help you avoid common pitfalls and set yourself up for success. Head over to boisereen.com/kickstart to download your copy today. And let's make your first steps count. When they come in, when your prospective owners come in, it's not lease to own, is it? They are purchasing, they're
No,
getting
yeah,
it.
I actually do a full sale in most cases.
Okay.
So I become the bank,
Right.
and I do that on purpose. One, because that's what they want. The end
Right.
buyer likes that. They want to own. There's a desire to own. And then I like the position of the bank too, where the bank's not the landlord, right? So the
Right.
bank is be like, okay, here
Yeah.
2 thumbs up. You did it. I got you in this space. Now it's your job to, keep it up and make it yours, pay it off if you want. Like, this is your opportunity. This is your asset. And so as a bank, what I like as an investor, what I love about being the bank is that it really is taking passive income to another level,
Right.
right? Because I'm doing 30-year loans. So if you think about it, every time I do this, I'm really setting up myself for passive income for the next 30 years potentially. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go that long,
Mm-hmm.
but that is the potential I just put together. And people were like, "Well, what if they default? And what if they do this?" And that can and will happen
But
if
you get the property back, you get to do it again, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And especially to have a good equity position on it. It's like it actually, because I require down payments and things, I often come out ahead. If the worst case happens, I get come out ahead. And that is one of the things that for people who are nervous about doing that type of investing,
Mm-hmm.
of being like the bank, is that don't do it unless like a potential foreclosure is actually a positive net gain for you. So you can
Right.
set it up in a way where you have a good enough equity position where you're not going to like be severely hurt by that. And so that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is like a lot of times, or I got burned on this before. So here's a big red flag warning if you're out there doing this space. This is my opinion because of my battle scars from doing this. Okay, is that I'm not a huge fan of debt, other banks' debt. Okay,
Okay.
and now this is what I wasn't. This is opposite of what I was taught. Okay, I was taught, it was like, okay, there's good debt and there's bad debt. And the good debt, you're making a spread on it. Like you got this asset, this makes you more money on that, which is great. And that is great unless the market does what a market can do and really dip, right? And there's no signs of that happening in Boise for quite some time. However, um, I don't sleep very well when I have a lot of outside debt, bank debt, and it can even be private debt. Because for me, I've just found that there's, uh, it, I wanted to see if I can do it without doing that. Because um, in the case there is, and that's why I partner with other investors on every project. Because I'd rather say, hey, rather than me taking a loan from you, other investor, and
Uh-huh.
then making a spread, or even from a bank, and like say, okay, the bank's charging me 6, and I'm charging, this other end borrower 8 or 9 or 10 or plus, right?
Right.
And then working that spread, I'm still saying, hey, I got this asset. I have a loan from a borrower. It's $100,000 loan. They're paying 10% interest or 12 or whatever the amount might be. And rather than, but I don't have I need to get my money out or so I can do another project. So I just share that asset with somebody else. So if I own a note, okay, I can then sell you or partner with other people and give you a partial of it. So if you come in with 50,000, you'll get half of the cash flow that comes from it. Okay, for example, on $100,000 note. And so that's what I'll do. I'll basically say, let's co-own the note, and then we'll share the wealth. I did all the work of getting it, making money, and now we'll share it. And so it's a great way for other people to come in who don't have the skill sets that I have
Mm-hmm.
to find the market and find the deal, to rehab the deal, and then to market it in an effective way. You get good pricing and get it sold, and then you qualify the buyer, and all these steps that I do in the process. But once I do that, I have an amazing asset that pays me for decades,
For sure.
right? And so I've now done this in the local market over 20 times on these in the last 18 months on these assets, these affordable housing assets. And so the great part about it let me put it this way. Here's an example. I'm working with an investor partner that I met from one of our real estate networking groups.
Awesome.
Okay. And so he had a fourplex. Okay. And it was something that he bought because it was a 1031 exchange. He didn't have a whole lot of time to figure out. So he picked something. And this was kind of an older fourplex. He was having a lot of turnover. He had a property manager that he was sort of happy with, but the property was constantly needing like stuff and rehab and things like that. And so he said he was kind of he was in it for 600,000, and he was netting 200,000 or 22,000 a month really from that investment.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Like when he really looked at the numbers,
Yeah.
that's
But it's
basically,
common here.
it's
I
common.
mean,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. So, because with all the turnovers and the costs, he was kind of near 2,000 a month. And I was like, wow, okay. And he decided to sell it. And I said, all right, well, if you took 200,000 of that sell that you have, so now you have 600,000 back in your bank account, you're trying to figure out what to do. It's like, take 2 of them and you can put them into 4 of my properties, 4 of my assets that I've got already lined up and ready to go. And you'll make 2,000 a month from your $200,000 investments, because that's the return I get people. It's about 12%. And you don't have to worry about maintenance. You don't have to worry about doing anything. And I have a loan servicer, so it's all being handled automatically. We don't have to do anything other than just make sure your check arrives. That's all you have to do. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah. And so that is the advantage of investing in that style. And
Right.
so, a lot of times people are like, well, I don't want to do a 30-year loan. I'm not going to be alive that long or whatever. And I was like, that's okay, because what you own is an asset that can be sold. Do you know anybody else who wants to make 12% on their money? Yeah. Okay. Sell them your piece when you're ready to sell off, or I'll help you. And so that is kind of the framework of what I've tried to build, because What I want is to completely take my replace my active income with my passive income. And I really think that whether you're in, any type of whatever you're on your journey as an investor or even a business owner, it's having that reoccurring income is
Mm-hmm.
so important. For someone who's had to live with a lot of ups and downs, highs and lows, financial stress for the last 20 years. And I've been living a great life. I've been able to leverage my time to go and do all kinds of traveling. I'm usually away 3+ months a year doing something overseas. But I still carry a lot of financial stress and I don't want that anymore. I'm getting too old for that, you know?
I I love it.
Good.
Yes, this is exactly preach it. That's what
Yeah.
I'm
I mean, it's
thinking
like,
because
yeah.
it is, and
Mhm.
people just, even in the investment world,
Mm.
it's the hustle culture is just so prevalent, and to create some of that, take that off the table and put it into something that's going to exist
It's it's
if you're
it's
not
something you
hustling.
should definitely be building on. I mean, I wish I would have done that earlier on. Right,
Oh,
right,
you and me both.
right. And so, and there's a lot of different cash flow
Right.
strategies. You don't have to do like what I'm doing, but whatever you're doing, whatever business or whatever business you have or whatever investment strategy you have, a part of it should be working on that passive strategy because, a lot of people argue, well, there's nothing really all that passive these days. And yeah, and there's different degrees of it for sure. Um, you might have one tenant that's amazingly passive and just pays you for, years and years and years and never moves, and never complains. You might get that. We get that occasionally. But you can design if you're really, you know, focused on that goal, you can then continue to improve it over time. And that's what I've done. I've like, okay, how can I make this better? How can I make this better? I'm constantly in that viewpoint so that I can then get the end result I want, which is 15, 20 grand coming in a month, like for the decades.
Like true mailbox money.
Yes.
People don't understand the work that it takes to get to that point, but once you have it in place,
Yeah. I mean,
it's
so I'm working like crazy right now to create that, but because I
yeah.
found a system that's working really well, and so I'm building it
Right.
very quickly, and so I don't feel the passive now because I'm active all over the
Right,
place setting
right,
these
right, right.
projects up,
Yeah.
and that's okay, and that there's a time for that, and we should be doing that. We should be active and building our business and building our net worth, but I highly, highly recommend having that focus of building that passive side,
Yeah.
because that's what's really going to give you the lifestyle you want. Because I know we were talking about this before the show. It's like a lot of people talk about that side of like how important that is and what they're going for, but they have a hard time practicing it because they're in that constant financial stress of
Mhm.
figuring out how to keep things going and or building and um, this is
Yeah.
why I'm preaching about the cash flow side of the business of just making sure you have that money coming in every month to kind of pay your bills, um, no matter what happens in the market. That's something you can do in real
Right.
estate, and it's something I feel like we needs to be we need to be reminded of that because we can lose sight of like, oh, I can go and make 100,000 on this one deal over here, and that's awesome and it's worth going for. But if you have to sacrifice a lot of passive opportunities in that
Right.
process, maybe it isn't the best bet.
Yeah.
So that's what I've had to learn. It's taken a long time to figure that out.
I love
Because
that.
there's just so many different ways to invest in real estate. Um, that I think to go back, I would have been much more heavier focused on the passive side. And when I did do those and then things went sideways, I sold them off or I had to just to keep my own house kind of a thing. That's fine. You're going to go through the learning process, but um, keeping that as your goal, because I'm basically building a pension, a retirement pension through real estate. And I feel like it's a goal that anyone can do if they're
Right.
focused on it. And if you're not getting a pension from somewhere else, oh my gosh, you're like, start thinking about it
Yeah.
and start working on it.
Yeah. Well, especially, I think a lot of people listening, if they're anything like a lot of the people that I talk to that are newer investors that come to us, they automatically think they've got to just start by all the active stuff,
Hmm.
because they've been hearing the fix and flip, the
Hmm.
wholesaling are just like the ways to go. You have a conversation with them and you realize they've got cash sitting in bank accounts, they've got things like on the sidelines, and there are options for them to even get a jump start on some of those things for cash flow. Like
Yeah.
you even mentioned you bring in the investors. I mean, basically, you're calling for people that want to invest in notes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
It's
there's so many
here's
options without all the
here's two
active.
big things of advice. It's like if you have money and you're looking for it to leverage it in more ways, I feel like, and if you're getting started, especially, is that you might have the money, but maybe you don't have the skill set, right, of
Hmm.
the strategies or the time, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of people in that bucket, and for that, you should find somebody who has the skill set, who has the opportunities and the assets that you can partner with, and they're out there and they're looking for you and they want to work with you.
We have a lot right within
Yeah.
Boise Reen.
Yeah, exactly. So, so look for that because that is a great way. That way, you don't have to like go out and try to figure this out part time and make a big mistake. Like you can work with somebody who's very experienced. Um, or if you don't have the money yet, but you're trying to figure out how to get in the space to create the money, well, then you got to lean in on getting more experienced, right? And learning stuff. And because you have to, hopefully that means you have a little more time to go figure that out and to find the right mentors, the right opportunities to learn from. Because there's a lot of people like in the Boise Real Estate Network that investment network that have so much experience that you can learn on. When I was 20 something and doing this from the starting, that was one of my biggest mistakes. I did not find enough mentors, or I went out and just made so many mistakes because I was like, I'm going to make this work. I can do this, and I would go out there and sometimes I'm reading books and things, but not having anybody to be like, okay, this happened. Now what? Kind
Right.
of stuff. I mean, I just
Yeah.
had to figure it out. And man, there were so many tough lessons there and a lot of opportunities that could have made money that didn't.
Yeah.
So I so think it's so important that the value of finding people who are in the space that are doing what you're trying to do to lean in on that because your timeline is going to skyrocket, to
Yeah.
your success, right? And you're just going to be able to move so much faster and smarter and avoid so many. And but you have to like reach out. You got to like
Right.
be a part. You got to network. You got to like talk to them. A lot of them are like me. You're like, dude, I'll tell you. I mean,
Right.
we want
Like
it. We
what
want to
not to
share.
do.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
we want to share because like, hey, we've been there and don't do
yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Like we want to share. And so that's what's great about, what you've been building with this network, this investors network here in Idaho is, um, this is so valuable resource because if it's when you're playing in real estate, it can be very high stakes, a lot of money involved, or a lot of lending involved, whether it's private lending or bank lending, or there's so many different elements inside real estate.
Liabilities and
Right, right. And there's a lot of experience out there. I've been investing all this time, but I've also been a real estate broker. I'm like, I know the ins and outs of real estate really well. And so I like helping people figure that out. I talked to some teenager who set it up through. He had a work assignment because he's in an entrepreneurial class,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah. I
his
love
parents
those.
knew me, and so they're like, "Oh, you should talk to Mike Turner." So last night I'm on a Zoom call with this senior in high school, and it was so great because I actually had a teenager who wanted to hear what I had to say. I
Yes.
have my own teenagers who are like kind of listen to me, but um, and it was great because I was like, well, okay, to be able to give advice, and because there's a lot of people like me who want to help, and that's what's great about finding a network where you can where people like that are gathering. You can find lots of them.
Yeah, and it almost seems like it's too good to be true sometimes because people are like, literally, I'm an open book. Ask me anything. And that's
Exactly.
true.
Yeah.
That's what happens at our events and in our member luncheons and so forth, where we're connecting with one another. And I sometimes new investors, I don't think they realize, but like to have an opportunity just to sit down, have lunch with someone at no extra charge to come here and just like pick their brain for an hour while that investor is learning, as the experienced investor, that new experienced investor too is learning new perspective from the
100%.
new investor
Mhm.
and the industries they're in. So it's this mutually benefiting experience. And so don't feel bad about going up to an experienced investor such as you, Mike, like at one of our connection events, because as you just said, you're an open book and we want nothing more than to raise all ships.
I
And
think I do want to say too that one thing I've been learning recently in the last couple of years, because I have been traveling around to different investor masterminds, paying lots of money to go to these events, and being a part of these groups where people are like crushing it on levels. You're like, oh my gosh, where I felt really small, basically, in that group. And there's a few things that I learned from that. One is, like you said, most of them are an open book, about how they did it.
mhm.
So it's great. Don't feel intimidated by that. And I felt that when I went there initially. I'm like, that was silly. And then number two is that when I got to know a lot of these people, I realized I was far ahead of them in many other aspects because a lot of them who pushed and pushed to build that wealth and build that book of business that
Mhm.
and make that money, their lives are not in good places. Their families were a bit broken, and they were, some of them were keeping together, but kind of. Um, and so I think it's important to realize what we're working for. Um, because if you talk to anybody and you keep asking the question like, well, okay, what are your goals? Oh, I want to make this much money, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. To do what? Well, so I can go travel and spend more time with my family. Great. Um, and what's stopping you from doing that right now? Well, I got, and so there's this there's this thing where if you start making more money, you still sometimes miss the thing that you want to do. And I think it's really important to, if you are investing and you find some level of success with that, is to or figure out what you're really trying to build. And a lot of times, from a lot of people want that financial security, right? They don't want to worry about not having enough later,
Mhm.
right? And so that drives them. And I think that's really important, to understand that emotion, because we do want enough. And if that is your case, then that's makes me want to revert back to like, well, okay, then maybe that might influence the type of investments you want to go after. Because if you want financial security, you want the freedom.
Mhm.
Well, you're going to have a hard time getting that if what you are building requires a lot of your time,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So you need to be focused on that. If you know, like, okay, this does take a lot of my time now, but I am at least focused on where I want to go with it and what I'm trying to achieve. And that's why I kind of position my brain to be like, okay, I'm building myself a retirement pension. And once I had that mindset, then it helped me get really clear on what kind of assets I wanted to own. Okay. And why. And so, because then I could get really clear on what I was building. I'm like, okay, I need
Right.
to get this much per month to really feel like, oh,
You're able to reverse engineer it.
yes. And I think if you have that, if you can stop and just take some time and do that now, then you can then start working on that. Whether that takes you 5 years, 15 years, or 25 years, okay. Like, start working on it. Like, know what it is, know what it looks like. Because I think a lot of times we can get in this, especially if you're newer, or even if you're well experienced, because I've done this, where I get in this spiral of indecision of what should I do next? Which project should I get involved in? Well, it it helps to have that clarity of what I'm actually wanting in the end. And that's why I moved away from just the fix and flip stuff, or even like a wholesale type of stuff, because those are great for temporary money. That's
Mm-hmm.
great temporary money. But that's the way you should see it. It should be a means to end. Like, what are you going to do with this so that you can get to what you really want?
Right.
And whatever that answer is, you should just know what it is. And it may not be different than mine, but just know what that is. And that will really help you get to your goals faster if you can see it. Like now that I got really clear on it, I'm running so fast now towards it. It's actually really exciting to be like on a track that I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm actually building what I did, like pictured in my head.
Yeah.
And helps me so much in the investment space.
We could go down this. I'm so aligned, and this is why I'm so excited that you're part of our community, Mike. And we can kind of preach this from the mountaintops, because to get that message out there and for people to really examine their why and what their end goal is, rather than just get all busy in real estate investing just to say they're an investor, is so critical. So
Mhm.
thank you for making that point. As we are getting closer to wrapping up, we cannot forget to talk about something that I know is near and dear to your heart,
Mm.
so near and dear to my heart now that I know about it. And let's talk about Impact Club.
Okay.
Tell me the genesis of your nonprofit
Mhm.
called Impact Club and
Okay.
what that is. I know that you had mentioned, I think you've raised over $500,000
Yes.
for charity. So
Yeah.
this is a big deal.
Yeah.
Unpack this for us.
Yeah, it started out with I was again in a networking mastermind group with other investors and people in real estate throughout in the country, and it was a smaller group, and we were talking about how to improve our businesses and make more money and things like that. But we're also curious about this kind of group that kind of led to that was like, well, what else can we do that's impactful, right? We feel the need sometimes to do that, but we're always not sure how to do that. And so we used our collective entrepreneurial brain power. We started brainstorming what could we do, and we looked at what other giving groups and different things around the country and locally were doing, and we said, "Oh, I like that what they did there, and I like what they did there, and I like what they did there." We started saying, "All right, well, let's take all of our favorite parts of what we're seeing and like try something." And so we kind of beta test this idea called Impact Club, which is essentially like a giving group or like crowdfunding for your local community, and and trying to make it in a way where in a way where we want to remove some of the elements we didn't like from some of the other charity fundraising things that we had been a part of. And so some of those things were like I like going to galas and stuff like that and getting dressed up. That's fun. But sometimes I go to one, or it can be a fundraising event where all of a sudden it's like an auction, and the $100, $150 plate of food was like I'm kind of tapped out. There were so many times when I would go to those things and I'd feel so poor because I couldn't contribute much, and then I didn't like the way that made me felt. So I'm like, okay, there's a place for those. But what if we did something that was more inclusive to more people, and then there wasn't any pressure to keep giving at the events, and so we just said, all right, we'll have a party. Basically, we'll throw an event. We'll do it at a pub or something cool, and we'll say, everyone chip in $100, and we'll do something good. And then, all right, well then we'll invite 3 nonprofits to come, and they'll have kind of like a 5 minutes to share their stories, and then we'll vote who we like the best, or who impacted us the most, and they'll get the biggest portion of the pie, basically of our $100 inputs. And so my first event was in 2017. We did it at Pay It Brewing here in Boise, and my goal for that event was to get 100 people to do that so we could give away $10,000.
Wow.
And so, and once I put out that goal, I was like sweating it because, like a week 2, I'm at like 30 something. I'm like, come on. I publicly said, I want 100 people, right? Let's do this. And we ended up getting 110 in the end. And that was event 1. And we do 4 events a year. And each event's very much like that, where we do it at a fun space. It's very casual. We show up. It lasts like an hour. I have live music. So it's entertaining. You're meeting up with fun people. And then I give the microphone to 3 nonprofits that the members have voted for to be there, essentially, at least nominate for. And then, we we hear their stories, which are always impactful. We're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's happening in our community. And then we get to give them money.
So fun.
It's so fun because, there's so many times I've handed over the check and they're in tears. And it's not just because it's the money, it's to be recognized for the work that they're doing in this community because they're behind the scenes, getting their butts kicked day in, day out, and with very little recognition. There's so many like heroes in our community doing this type of work. And so we've just been able to use our entrepreneurial kind of skills to kind of put this together. And it hasn't been that hard, but then I invite anyone to come and say, hey, come check it out. Or if you want to be a member, great, throw in $100, awesome. And if you need to skip this quarter, fine, because I understand like things get tight. So we just keep it really casual like that so that it's so easy to give. And then you get to see your $100 like have massive impact because I will bring in like the past winner from the previous event and say, what were you able to do with the $10,000 or whatever we were able to give you, right?
Yeah.
And it's so fun. And so my goal with Impact Club was to keep growing it, right? And because I thought, all right, well, if we have 100 members, we can give away 10,000 in an event. If we had 150, we can give away 15,000. And then what if we had 500 members? We get 50. Right. So you could just have these. And so we were tracking like that. We got up to like 250, then COVID. And that dropped us down to like 150. And we're kind of holding on a little bit, but we're doing fine. But since we've been doing that collectively over since 2017, we've donated over $500,000 to Boise just from having fun events like that.
It's so cool.
Yeah, just from having fun events.
I love the simplicity of it.
Yeah.
Because you can create this huge nonprofit and have this 95% in overhead, right?
Yeah,
but you
exactly.
just kept it so simple.
Right. In fact, I don't even have a bank account for Impact Club because honestly, it's like show up, we do like a little raffle.
The money just goes straight to the charity.
Yeah, exactly. 100% goes to the charities.
And I know
100%.
you've done a lot personally though, Mike.
Sure.
You and Amanda have
yeah. The events,
thank you
events
for all
cost
that
money
you've done.
to pull off, but it's been such a fun thing to do, and we could have gotten sponsors and things to help cover some of the and we still do that, but it's been fun to be more grassroots with it because it's made it feel so organic and fun, I feel.
So when's the next one and how can we get involved?
Yeah, so
I joined last time.
Okay, yeah.
And I joined and I went and I loved it, and I saw so many familiar faces in the community. So we need a big group from Boise Reen to come to the next one.
Yeah, that would be amazing. So it's December 4th, and it's like 6 to 7:30 p.m. We're doing it at this really cool space. You may not have been there before. It's called The Lounge at the End of the Universe. It's a comedy club off of Vista.
I've heard about it, but not been.
Yeah, totally like kind of hard to find, Vista, Overland area. And you're like, really? Something over there? I'm like, yeah. And it's kind of like in the basement of this building, but it's a super cool venue. You go in there and like, oh, wow, this is nice. They do a really good job there. Anyway, so that's where that event is. It's December 4th. You can go to impactclubboise.com. That sends you to our Facebook page. But anyway, there's a link there if you want to join. It's $100. You can cancel anytime, but basically we get you a t-shirt. It says Impact Club. You can wear it at the event if you want to. It's kind of fun. But it's just kind of this feel-good club that we're doing here in Boise that and we do it once a quarter. Our next one is December 4th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, sounds great. And if you happen to be listening to this after December 4th, this happens quarterly. So what's the website? You
just go to impactclubboise.com and you'll find what you need to know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Or find Mike in Boise Reen or on Facebook.
Exactly.
Plug, you've got a great Facebook account with a personal journal streak going.
Yes, I do.
So.
Yeah, I write every day, kind of like a journal entry every day. I started that last January, and I'm on tape 265 or something like that now.
Oh, so cool. There's so much. You got to just meet up with Mike at a future event. He travels extensively. It's a whole nother podcast we're going to get into someday.
Okay.
But this has been great. Mike, what is the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Well,
Pick one.
Yeah, right. So I'd say you can just you can email me, Mike at 208invest.com. It's just a great way to get a hold of me. Just Google me online and you'll find me.
And find you at a future event for the Boise
find me on
Real Estate
Facebook.
Investor Network.
Find me there. Just just reach out to me. Don't be shy about reaching out to me. I'm happy to chat with you about your investment questions or at an event. Come talk to me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. I know people have gotten huge value. I have. Can't wait to listen to it back. Know that you're a great resource for all things silver financing and all the things. So thank you again for being here, and thanks for listening to the show. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Jenna.
Well, that's a wrap for today. Thanks for joining me here at the Idaho Real Estate Investors Show. I hope you're leaving with new insights and inspiration to help you truly grow wealth through real estate. If you enjoyed the show, do me a favor. Please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with those that can benefit from it. Go and grow, and I'll catch you on the next episode.